Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm really flabbergasted. First of all, it's such a loud audience. But more than that, the way I am received. You know, I used to write letters to the Sniper Lagoon, and I wrote him, addressed him with the titles appropriate for one of the greatest tzaddikim and goyim of our generation. And he wrote me back, please stop writing these titles to me. Okay? He says, Oy loy, Misha, Toyano boy, ve'enoi. Woe unto the person who people think he is great, and he is not. Now, of course, that didn't apply to him, but trust me, it applies to me. Someone said, you can fool some of the people all of the time. That's pretty good. So I think I've been able to do it. You know, I'm very sensitive to the problems and issues of elder care, for a very obvious reason. Baruch Hashem, I celebrated my 80th birthday, and Hashem should allow me to get to the traditional 120. But I can identify more easily with problems of the elderly. But I've got to tell you what some of my concerns are. You know, we are guided by halacha, we are guided by Torah. But the Rambam says that Odom mushba mechaverov, that a person is influenced by his environment. And the Rambam goes on to say that if you lived in a corrupt environment, move away. No. It's not easy to give up your home and move to another city. And then he goes on to say, and if it so happens that you can't find another city which is not corrupt, go into the woods and live in a cave. But the point of that is that we cannot escape the influence of our environment. And we have to be aware of it, because if we are on guard of it, then perhaps we can resist the negative aspects of it. We live in a very negative environment for the care of the elderly. I'm talking the entire country, the entire Western civilization. Because our culture, the Western civilization culture, worships youth and productivity. And older people, they're certainly not youth, and they may not be productive. And apparently the only saving grace is that we are an important and a very forceful voting bloc, so that a person running for office knows that if he's not going to look after the interest of the elderly, he's not going to get elected. And that's the only chesed that we have, because otherwise the odds are stacked against the elderly. But let me tell you why. Very simple. When I received my first Social Security check, my first Social Security premium back in 1960, I paid $144 a year. Because at that time, there were 17 people working to support one recipient of Social Security. And the burden was divided among 17 people. Today, 2.3 people support one elderly recipient. And the burden that is felt by the young people is considerable, and they resent it. Especially when you see the predictions that in another X number of years, Social Security and Medicare is going to get broke. Either it will or it won't. But younger people are saying, and what's going to be in it for me? And so there is resentment towards the elderly. Actually, this began by the time, in Medicare time, when, during, I think, President Johnson's administration, when there was a question of bringing in Medicare. And at that time, the AMA, the American Medical Association, discouraged it. And one of the people from the administration said, "You have no right to object to the Medicare. You are the ones who brought it about. You are the ones who kept people alive." So, doctors became the villains. Now, doctors are heroes. The doctor's a hero when he saves my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle. Yeah. Then he's a hero. But as a group who created a problem that the country doesn't know how to deal with, they're villains. It's like the story of Mr. Goldberg, who ran for election as president of the shul. And there were 20 members there. And the vote was 19-1 against him. And as everyone left, everybody went up and they said, "Sam, you know, that one vote for you, that was me." And the next person came up, "Yes, Sam, I was that one vote for you. I was one." So he said to them, "Individually, you are wonderful. But as a group, you're a bunch of scoundrels." And that's where it is with medicine today. The doctor who does for my family is fine, but medicine as a whole is under attack for many reasons, and one of them because there is an unspoken resentment, and it's the kind of thing that you don't want to speak about because it's politically not correct. But let's not fool ourselves. The state of Oregon, a number of years ago, legislated that certain medical procedures are not going to be funded by the state for anyone over 80. And that kind of thing spreads through the states. And since I've already passed my 80th birthday, it makes me a little nervous. But I think we have to realize to be on our guard as to what the challenge is. In terms of Kibbutz, there's only one thing I want to tell you. And that is the Gemara talks about, I think about Rabbi Yochanan, and he says how fortunate he was. What was his great hatzlocha? That his father died during the mother's pregnancy with him, and that she died in childbirth. So he was born an orphan. So what's the hatzlocha? He never had to violate kibbutz av v'em. He never knew his parents, and he never had the possibility of violating kibbutz av v'em. That is how important kibbutz av v'em is. I get questions, and you know, I have a very skewed picture of the world. People don't call me up to tell me how wonderful things are. Everybody calls me up with a problem. And all I see from morning to night is problems. So I get to think the whole world is problems. And I have to pull myself back into reality and realize, no, whether it's 2% or 3% or 5%, feels the majority of the world is free of these kinds of horrendous problems that I encounter. But nevertheless, they're there. It's wonderful when the family has an opportunity that elderly parents can live with them. And it can be an unbelievable blessing. The grandchildren can have a wonderful relationship with Bubby and Zeta. Some of the Kim babies said it's just a wonderful kind of relationship when all goes well. But all doesn't always go well. And so you have a situation where the elderly person begins to lose his memory. Not the way I'm losing my memory, but unfortunately not remembering almost anything. And needs constant supervision. And there's a problem that the elderly person may walk out of the house and not know where to come back. Now, this didn't used to be a problem. And I was in Israel, and I saw there was an old woman walking down the street, and somebody came over and took her and said, "Here, Bubby, I'll take you home." And even in this country, it was possible. Much more difficult today, because wandering out in the street into traffic, and everybody going pretty much their own way. They don't even know who this elderly person is. You know, you can live in America, you can live door to door in an apartment house with another and never know who they are. This is the kind of thing that our culture has created. So there are problems. And when all goes good, it's wonderful. But when there are difficulties, when there are issues, you have to have where to turn to for help. And this is why elder care is so tremendously important. We have another issue that we've never dealt with before. That thanks to medicine, that people are living longer and more people are reaching the age of 70, 75, 80. And their children are perhaps in their 40s. And these children who are in their 40s have young children and adolescents. And they have to care for the children. But if the parents need care, they have to care for the parents. Okay? So they're closed in between two sources of demands. And that's given rise to what we refer to as the sandwich generation. Right? They're in between the two. And again, when everything goes well, there's no problem. But when issues do arise,